A pleasant day to all. Welcome to our virtual classroom. And in today's lecture, what we're going to discuss is all about point of care testing. Our learning outcomes are as follows. Apply different analytical methods in performing laboratory analysis. Discuss the process of automation in the clinical chemistry section. Okay? When we said point of care testing, take note guys that these are the tests that can be performed on the bedside. No? These are the tests that can be done no? near the patient. These are the tests that are called to be the near patient testing. These are the procedures that can be done on the physician's office or other alternative sites. Okay? And if we're going to define point of care testing or POCT, okay, it is those analytical patients testing activities provided within the institution but outside the premises of the clinical laboratories. And if you're going to tell or if you're going to discuss point of care testing, point of care testing is usually administered in the laboratory or it can be performed also by non-laboratory personnel. It can be doctor or it can be nurse. Okay? And as you see here in this illustration, there are a lot of machines or devices used no, for point of care testing. And I want you to take note that it is not only the clinical laboratory who has been affected by the point of care of testing because uh, even nurses perform point of care testing. Even respiratory therapists, even radiologic technologists can also have or can also perform point of care testing on their specialized field. Okay, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages for point of care of testing. Advantages of point of care of testing is number one, the convenience for both parties. What does it mean? Convenience for both patient and for clinicians. Why? Because they can perform the test on the clinic. They can have the results right after performing the test. They can already conclude or arrive with the diagnosis of the patient based on the result of the test performed using the point of care testing. Take note of this, guys. Usually, the sample of choice, or take note, in chemistry, the sample of choice for point of care testing is capillary blood. Nakikitandaan po, the sample of choice in point of care testing in chemistry is the capillary blood. Okay. Next, reduced turnaround time. Why is it reduced turnaround time is one of the advantage or one of the promise of point of care testing because madali na yung result. The medtech will not separate the serum to red cell. The medical technologist will not do the barcoding. The medical technologist will not do the processing. No, because the patient and the clinicians can already have the result. The patient will not wait for more than an hour, for almost a couple of hours, for them to have the results. Because, as we define point of care testing, bedside, they can already have the results. Okay? Then, reduction of clinic visits, since the patient himself or herself can perform the test. No? He or she can analyze already the blood sample. For example, glucose. That's the most common point of care testing using of glucometer. The patient himself or herself can determine his or her glucose level at the comfort of their home. Thus, there is a reduction or minimizing the chances or the number of visits for or in the laboratory or in the hospital. Another is better patient management. Bakit better patient management? Mas mabilis eh. Okay? Decreased manpower. Well, Yeah, decreased manpower, but it doesn't mean there will be a layoff or retrenchment in the medical laboratory field. No, most especially in the medical technology field, no. Because at the end of the day, valid results are still results which are performed by the medical laboratory scientist or medical technologist. Less traumatic daw ang point of care testing. Bakit siya less traumatic? Kasi hindi mo na kailangan mag-perform ng venipuncture. You can have the results using the capillary blood by simply having a finger prick. Reduce pre-analytical error. Why? Ano ba yung mga pre-analytical error or pre-examination error natin na yan? Patient identification, patient preparation, no, sample preparation. Those are examples of pre-analytical errors. Since we don't have to separate the serum from the red cell, we don't have to do the centrifugation, don't have to do the barcoding, less chances of having a pre-analytical error. Improve patient outcomes. Mas mabilis yung management, mabilis yung result right after you have the result. Improve cost of test and wide menu of analysis since marami na yung test na nagagawa for point of care testing. However, if it has a advantages, definitely it will always have a disadvantage. One of the disadvantage of point of care testing is more expensive. If you will have point of care testing compared to test performed in clinical laboratory, mas mahal siya. Bakit? Because point of care testing, example is glucometer. Ano ba yung ginagamit sa glucometer? Strips. Mas mahal yung strips. At yung strips, brand specific pa yan, type specific pa yan. And another problem on that is disposable. Okay? Maintenance of quality control and quality assurance, since the one who is performing the test is not a registered medical technologist who is trained in maintaining the quality control and quality assurance of the machine, ay hindi na nila yung gagawin. They are not bothered to perform it because they don't need to do it. Because they believe it's working well. Okay? Maintenance of quality control assurance, quality control and quality assurance, as well as the management of the quality control are the major disadvantage of our point of care testing. Analytical issues. The machine itself can be the source of error. Okay, difficulty in documentation since you don't have the official results. No, when the doctor asks you what is the level of your sugar, blah blah, okay, you cannot give an exact value because you don't have the documentation. You don't have the official results. And another disadvantage of point of care of testing is the comparability of the results. Since the specimens used are varies, no, you cannot compare the result. Capillary blood and venous blood. Capillary blood contains no, arterial fluid, tissue fluid, and venous blood. That's why you cannot compare the integrity of the results performed using a point of care of testing and the one performed using venous blood. Okay? Point of care testing is usually performed, okay, sinabi natin, no, usually performed by non-laboratory personnel. That's why the CALA requires accreditation, licenses, and regulation in order to perform a point of care of testing. When we said CLIA, that is stands for Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendment Certificate or amendments, no? Which is enacted by the U.S. Congress, no, to establish quality standards for all laboratory testing, ensuring the accuracy and the reliability and as well as the timeliness of patients' test results. No? It is no, sir, the question is in the Philippines, it is the counterpart of CILA, the BRL, the Bureau of Research Laboratories. No, the one who is giving the license to operate to all hospitals and laboratories. for our National External Quality Assurance Scheme, the NEQAS, yung mga National Reference Laboratories natin. Okay? Now, for point-of-care testing, tests are classified based on their complexities. No? So the FDA issued 4 categories. We have the wave test, we have the moderate complexity test, we have the high complex testing, and we have the providers performed microscopy test. When we said wave testing, no, these are usually the tests, or these are usually tests that can be performed ng madali lang. No? Examples of this are dipsticks test, urine pregnancy test, blood glucose monitoring, no? And fructosamine, no, cholesterol, triglycerides. Those are examples of point of care of testing under the wave test. Now, for moderate complex testing and for high complex testing, this too includes no certification, no personal qualifications, as well as proficiency testing and quality assurance and quality controls, as well as patient time test management. Okay? For providers performed microscopy testing, from the word itself, providers performed microscopy testing, this is considered a subcategory of moderately complex testing. From the word itself, microscopy testing, no, the clinician or the one who is performing the test has or involves the use of microscope. However, the use of microscope is just limited to bright field or phase contrast microscopy. And take note, no, take note, those who are only qualified to perform the PPMP are the one who can perform the PPMP. No? Now we have licenses, yes, okay, which are released no by the CILA. Number one, we have the certificate of waiver. When we said certificate of waiver, these are issued to the laboratory to perform only wave test. No, yung mga wave test natin, yung mga dipstick, urine pregnancy, yung mga blood glucose monitoring. Okay? We also have the COR or the certificate of registration. And when we said certificate of registration, these are issued to the laboratory that enables the entity to conduct moderate or high complexity testing, or until the entity is determined to serve by the survey in compliance with the CILA. We also have the certificate for PPMP, no? PPMP stands for Providers Perform Microscopy Procedures or Procedure. No? And this is issued to the laboratory in which physicians or mid-level practitioner or dentist performs no test other than the microscopy procedure. And take note, the microscopy or the microscope is limited to bright field or phase contrast microscope only. We also have certificate of compliance, and when we said certificate of compliance, that is issued to the laboratory after an inspection that finds the laboratory to be in compliance with all the applicable CILA requirements. No? And of course, we have the certificate of accreditation, which is issued to the laboratory on the basis of laboratory's accreditation by an accreditation organization approved by the Healthcare Finance Administration. The question is, sir, do we have this in the Philippines? The answer is actually none. Okay? Ito po yung types of CLIA certificates, no, for point of care testing. Okay? For the implementation, no, document request via standardized request form should be followed. Okay? Evaluate request using the program structure and consider whether the comparable testing is available in the central clinical laboratory. Okay? Now, what are the issues? Average turnaround time and cost of testing in labs versus point of care of testing. Kasi nga mas mabilis sa point of care of testing, yun yung nagiging isang problem o nagiging isang issue. Impact on the length of the patient satisfaction. Up until when masasatisfy ang patient to have the point of care of testing. Impact on the operational efficiency of the department and options for achieving objectives other than point of care of testing. Okay? Now, what are the things to consider in the preliminary selection of the devices or method for point of care of testing? Number one, review options and limit selection to several methods and instruments. Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? Ano lang ba yung kailangan mong i-perform? Ano lang ba yung kailangan mong bigyan ng pansin ng point of care of testing? Okay? Next, criteria for selection. For selection of the equipment or machine. Number one, ease of use. Definitely, if you're going to choose a machine that will help you for your work, you are going to choose the machine which is a friendly machine. User-friendly. Cost, of course, is also considered, is also a factor. Because at the end of the 5 year of having the result, of having the machine, no, dapat naka-break even ka na doon. Or, kung di mo naka-break even, dapat nasambot mo na yung binili mo for that machine. Test minus. Ano yung mga kaya niyang gawin? No? Let's say for example, yung po mga usually na ginagamit na ngayon for electrolytes is mga point of care of testing. Electrolyte. Ano lang yung kaya nun? Sodium, potassium, ionized calcium. Well, that machine can also be used for serum, for urine samples. Okay? Next, comparability to clinical laboratory instrumentation. Is the principle almost the same? Is the results is almost the same? No? Buying group contracts for business side. Software features. Kaya bang lagyan ng LIS? Kasi kung hindi, that will be a problem if the results cannot be transmitted via LIS. Data management, connectivity. No? Those are the criteria in selecting devices, no, for point of care of testing. Another thing to consider is perform literature review. Search for a data on performance of the method and instrument. Ask someone who is having or who is using the machine. Ask him, ask her, ask your fellow medical laboratory technologist, how is that machine works? Is it good? Is it user-friendly? Is it cost-efficient? Okay? Contact other users or references trading for the validation of data. Perform preliminary limited validation including mini correlations. Okay? And then that's the time that you have to select the instrument or method if you've done already the following procedures. Okay? Now, CLIA is very strict in the point of care of testing. They have personal requirements. There should be someone who is the director, there is someone who is the coordinator, and the designated contacts or trainers. Kapag po sinabi nating director, he or she must be a PhD, or ano ibig sabihin ng PhD? Doctor of Philosophy, no? In management or in clinical laboratory management. MD, medical doctor. Okay? DO, laboratory scientist or pathologist. Responsibilities ng director, policies, administration, financial, and technical decisions. Kung sa ang technical decision mo, he or she must be knowledgeable also of using and performing point of care of test. Another one is point of care coordinator. Responsibilities of this person is implementing and coordinating POCT, facilitating compliance with procedures, policies, and regulations. We also have the designated contracts or trainers in non-laboratory department. Kasi nga, this can be performed by non-laboratory personnel. So, dapat may nagte-train sa kanila. No? Nurses should be trained. I want to share this, ano man tawag doon? I want to share this insight. I don't want to blame the registered nurses. But if you are going to look the organizational chart of almost all hospitals here in the Philippines, and if you will ask, who is the infection control officer, you will notice and you will observe that the one in charge in the infection control is nurse. I don't want to humiliate. I don't want to discriminate. And I don't want to be boastful in saying this statement. But the problem is, why hospitals appoints nurses as their infection control officer, where in fact there are registered medical technologists who have more than 5 units of microbiology and parasitology in each field. Tinuha nila ng iba't ibang course. POCT 5 units, para 3 units. Another units for mycology and virology. Bakit ang infection control is the one who is not really working on the laboratory? The one who is not performing the test itself. Diba? That's the problem in the clinical setting. That's why if you will ask them to do the point of care of testing, that testing, they must be trained by someone who is knowledgeable in performing the test. Okay? Now, the quality management includes the comparisons to central laboratory, the results, harmonization and standardization. But the problem nga, kung hindi naman non-medical technologists na mag-perform, they will not be bothered if they did not perform the quality control, the standardization. But in order to maintain the quality, they should perform it. Okay? Proficiency testing for those who are performing the test, most especially in moderate and highly complex testing. Okay, users competency testing and management of users record. Okay, now what are the POC applications? Now these are the principles used by the POC machines: fluctance, electrochemistry, immunoturbidity, lateral flow, flow through, solid phase, spectrophotometry, fluorescence, and polymerase chain reaction. Okay. So what are the applications of point of care of testing? It can be used for glucose. That's the most or the highest volume of POCT test. At yun din yung unang-unang alam mo na nagagawa. Okay? Blood chemistry. Ano nga yung sinabi natin kanina? Fructosamine, cholesterol, triglyceride, pwede rin kasi na sa point of care of testing. But again, the question is the reliability of this. Coagulation can also be done. Ano yung example ng coagulation na point of care of testing? CTBT. Pero primary investigation mo lang yun. You cannot rely only on the clotting and bleeding time. Okay? HbA1c can also be done in point of care of testing. Now, if you were able to donate blood during the mass blood donation of Asian Hospital, yun pong pag-determine nila ng hemoglobin, no, ng patient, hematocrit rather, ng patient, is an example of point of care testing. Kukunin ka ng dugo, ilalagay dun sa machine nilang mata, ilalagay dun sa card, isusuot sa machine, and the machine will determine the hemoglobin level. That is an example of point of care of testing. Okay? Next, POCT informatics, the POCT analyzers usually connected to LIS system. Pwede ba? Eh, yung glucometer ba pwede? Hindi. Okay? Connectivity Industry Consortium. Yung CIC, ano pong ibig sabihin ng Connectivity Industry Consortium? Pag sabi ko ng consortium, grupo. No? Nagli-link po sila dyan. Next, certain patient information should always accompany patient results. Okay? So, these are the things about point of care of testing. Before I end, I want you to remember that this might be helpful in a clinical laboratory setting, but the one who will perform the POCT must be knowledgeable, must know how to release or to validate the results. And POCT is a great help, but it will never replace the original medical laboratory technologist who will perform the test results. That's why I am very particular to all my students to perform their test, to perform the experiment, to perform the analysis with all confidence, absolute reliability, and accuracy. Okay? So, thank you for listening. This will be the end of our lecture in Clinical Chemistry 1 for the prelim period. Thank you, and I hope you are all well.